Commander Voreth stood at the observation deck of the Kalari warship, his 4 eyes fixed on the planet below. His gray skin rippled with unease as he watched the data streams flow across the screens. The Kalari had been watching Earth for 3 standard cycles now, studying its dominant species before making first contact. What they had learned disturbed him greatly. "Sir, the human conflict has entered its 4th day," reported Lieutenant Kessa, her voice carrying a note of disbelief. "They are still fighting." Voreth's mandibles clicked together in confusion. "That is impossible. No species can maintain combat for that duration. Check your instruments again." "I have checked them 7 times, Commander. The readings are accurate. I have run every diagnostic protocol we have." The Kalari were the finest warriors in the known galaxy. Their military training was legendary across 17 conquered worlds. Their soldiers could fight for 18 hours before requiring rest. It was a point of pride among their people, a biological advantage that had helped them build an empire. But what they were witnessing on the human planet defied everything they understood about biology and warfare. The conflict was taking place in a region the humans called the Eastern Mountains. 2 opposing forces had clashed over control of a strategic pass that connected 2 major population centers. The Kalari had expected the battle to end within a standard day, as most species conflicts did. Instead, they watched in growing amazement as the humans continued to fight through night and day, through rain and heat, through injury and exhaustion. "Zoom in on Sector 7, Voreth commanded, leaning forward in his chair. The screen showed a group of human soldiers taking cover behind destroyed vehicles. They had been fighting for 92 hours. Their faces were covered in dirt and dried blood. Their uniforms were torn and stained. Some had bandages wrapped around wounds that should have kept them in medical facilities for weeks. And yet they still moved. They still fought. They still held their positions. One soldier in particular caught Voreth's attention. The human was a female, small compared to her companions. Her dark hair was matted with sweat and dust. Data showed she had taken a projectile wound to her left arm during the first day of fighting. She had wrapped it herself with a piece of torn cloth and continued. Now, 4 days later, she was still on the front line, directing her team with hand signals and barked commands that carried across the smoke-filled battlefield. "How is she still functioning?" Voreth asked no one in particular. His voice was barely a whisper. Lieutenant Kessa pulled up the soldier's biological readings on a side screen. "Her stress hormones are at levels that would kill a Kalari. Her body is producing chemicals we have no names for. She has slept for approximately 40 minutes in the past 92 hours, taken in fragments during brief pauses in combat." 40 minutes, Voreth repeated slowly. He could not believe what he was hearing. "Our soldiers require 8 hours of rest after 18 hours of combat. It is biological necessity. It is written into our training manuals." "Humans appear to have different necessities, Commander." Voreth moved to another screen showing the opposing force. They were in similar condition, exhausted, wounded, pushed far beyond any reasonable limit. Their vehicles had run out of fuel. Their supplies were nearly gone. They had every reason to retreat, to regroup, to accept a temporary defeat. And they too continued to fight. Neither side would yield. Neither side would admit that they could not continue. The Kalari had conquered 17 species across the galaxy. They had studied warfare for 10,000 years. They believed they understood combat better than any other civilization in existence. But watching these humans, Voreth felt something he had not experienced since he was a young trainee facing his first battle simulation. He felt uncertain. He felt, though he would never admit it to his crew, afraid. "Bring me everything we have on human endurance," he ordered. "I want to understand how this is possible. Pull records from every database we have." The data that appeared on screen was troubling. Humans, it seemed, had evolved as persistence hunters on their home world. Unlike the Kalari, who had evolved as ambush predators designed for quick strikes and rapid retreats, Humans had developed the ability to chase prey for vast distances over many hours. Their bodies were built for the long chase. They could regulate their temperature through sweating, allowing them to remain active when other creatures would overheat. Their two-legged movement was efficient over long distances. Their bodies stored energy in ways that maximized endurance. But it was more than just physical capability. The reports showed something the Kalari had difficulty understanding. Humans could push through pain. They could ignore exhaustion. They could force their bodies to continue when every biological signal screamed at them to stop. They called this ability many names in their many languages: willpower, determination, stubbornness, grit. The Kalari had no word for it in their language. They had never needed one. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the surface," Kessa announced. "It appears to be a human military communication, unencrypted." "Let me hear it." The voice that came through the speakers was rough and tired. It belonged to a human commander on the battlefield. His words were spoken in a language their translation systems could process. "This is Colonel Martinez to all units. I know you're tired, I know you're hurt. I know some of you haven't slept in days. Hell, I know some of you can barely stand, but we hold this pass. We hold it because if we don't, those people in the valley behind us have nowhere to go. 60,000 civilians are counting on us, so we dig in, we stay strong, and we fight until we can't fight anymore. Then we fight some more." Martinez out. Voreth's mandibles hung open. The human was not ordering his soldiers to rest. He was not pulling them back for recovery. He was telling them to continue to push beyond their limits to give more than they had. And from the response signals that followed, they were obeying. Willingly. Eagerly. "Commander," Kessa said quietly, "our pre-invasion assessment may need to be revised." Voreth had been thinking the same thing. The Kalari had planned to conquer Earth in a swift campaign. Their superior technology and military discipline would overwhelm the primitive humans in a matter of weeks. That had been the plan. It had seemed so simple, so certain. But watching these soldiers fight for 92 hours without rest, Voreth wondered if his people truly understood what they would be facing. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "I want reports every hour, every 30 minutes. I want to know everything that happens down there." He turned away from the screens and walked to the large observation window. The blue and green planet hung in the darkness of space, beautiful and seemingly peaceful from this distance. Down on its surface, humans were fighting and dying with a ferocity that made Voreth's two hearts beat faster. The Kalari were proud warriors. They had never been defeated in major combat. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, but they had also never faced an enemy that simply refused to stop. Their battle doctrine assumed that enemies would behave rationally, that they would retreat when wounded, that they would surrender when outmatched, that they would rest when exhausted. Humans, it seemed, did none of these things. As Hour 93 began, Voreth made a decision. He would continue watching. He would learn everything he could about these strange, stubborn creatures, and he would report to the Kalari High Command that perhaps, just perhaps, Earth was not the easy conquest they had assumed. The war room of the Kalari flagship had become a classroom. Officers gathered around screens, studying the human battle with the same intensity they would give to analyzing an enemy fleet formation. What they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about war and warriors. Hour 94 arrived, and the humans were still fighting. General Thax, the oldest and most decorated warrior among them, stood with his arms crossed, watching silently. His scarred face showed no emotion. He had fought in 37 campaigns across the galaxy. He had seen species surrender in hours, flee in terror, and die in hopeless last stands. He had never seen anything like this. "They are not soldiers," he said finally, his deep voice filling the room. "They are something else entirely." No one disagreed with him. No one could. The battle below continued into its 95th hour. The Kalari observers had stopped rotating shifts. Every officer on the ship wanted to witness what was happening. The mess hall was empty. The recreation areas were abandoned. All eyes were on the screens showing the human conflict. Private Tomer was the youngest Kalari on the ship. He had joined the military to earn glory and honor for his family. He had trained for 2 years, enduring physical tests that broke many of his peers. He had believed himself to be among the strongest of his generation, a future hero of the Empire. Now, watching a human soldier carry a wounded comrade across an open field while under enemy fire, Tomer felt small. He felt inadequate in a way he had never experienced before. "How does he do that?" Tomer asked the officer beside him. His voice trembled slightly. "The data shows he has 3 broken ribs and a damaged lung. He should not be able to walk, let alone carry another being." Senior warrior Morix shook his head slowly. "I do not know, young one. The humans seem to operate on different rules than the rest of the galaxy, rules we do not understand." On screen, the soldier reached cover and set down his comrade gently behind a concrete barrier. A medical human rushed over to help, already pulling supplies from a worn bag. The wounded soldier was taken away for treatment. But the carrier did not rest. He did not even pause to catch his breath. He picked up a weapon from a fallen fighter, checked its ammunition with practiced hands, and returned to the battle. Tomer felt his stomach twist. In Kalari culture, a wounded warrior was honorably withdrawn from combat. They had proven their worth and earned the right to rest and recover. It was a mark of respect. The humans had no such tradition, it seemed. They fought until they could not move, and even then they tried to keep fighting. "Is this what we will face?" Tomer asked quietly. "When we invade?" Morix did not answer. His silence was answer enough. In the command center, Commander Vorath was in communication with High Command. The face of Admiral Zeros filled the screen, his expression skeptical but growing more serious with each passing minute. "You are telling me, Commander, that these primitives have been fighting continuously for 95 hours. "Yes, Admiral. I am transmitting the data now, all of it." The Admiral's eyes moved as he reviewed the information. Slowly, his expression changed from skepticism to concern to something that might have been fear. "These readings cannot be accurate," Zero said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I have verified them multiple times, Admiral. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Their bodies seem designed for extended combat in ways ours are not. More importantly, their minds refuse to accept defeat. They do not know when to stop." "All species have limits, Commander." "Yes, Admiral, but I am beginning to wonder if we have correctly identified what the human limits are, or if such limits even exist." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. His mandibles clicked together nervously. "Continue your observation. Inform me when the battle ends." "Understood, Admiral." The communication ended. Vorath turned back to the main screen. Hour 95 had become hour 96. The humans were still fighting. The sun was setting on the battlefield, casting long shadows across the devastated landscape. Neither side showed any sign of stopping. On the surface, the battle had reached a critical point. Both sides were running low on ammunition. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties. Both sides had every logical reason to withdraw and regroup. Neither side did. Instead, something remarkable happened. As supplies dwindled, the fighting became more personal. Humans engaged in close combat, using whatever they could find as weapons. They fought with knives, with broken equipment, with rocks and pieces of metal. Some fought with their bare hands. The Kalari watched in stunned silence as soldiers who could barely stand continued to struggle against each other. "They should have stopped by now," Lieutenant Kessa said, her voice barely a whisper. "By every measure we understand, they should have stopped hours ago, days ago." Commander Vorath nodded slowly. "And yet they continue. Do you know what this tells us, Lieutenant?" "What, Commander?" "It tells us that our measures are wrong. We have been calculating human capability using Kalari standards. That was our mistake. Humans are not Kalari. They are something altogether different, something we have never encountered. A cheer went up from one of the monitoring stations. Movement in Sector 3. One side is advancing. The screens showed a human unit pushing forward despite their wounds and exhaustion. They were led by the female soldier Vorath had noticed earlier, the one with the wounded arm. She was screaming something at her soldiers, words of encouragement mixed with commands, and they were responding. Somehow, impossibly, they found the strength to charge. The defenders met them head-on. The fighting was brutal and desperate. Bodies fell on both sides. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The screams of the wounded mixed with the shouts of those still fighting. And then, suddenly, after what seemed like hours but was only minutes, it was over. The defensive line broke. Soldiers began throwing down their weapons and raising their hands in surrender. The pass had been taken. After 96 hours of continuous combat, the battle had ended. The Kalari observation room was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They had just witnessed something that should not have been possible. On screen, the victorious soldiers did not celebrate. They were too tired for that. Many simply collapsed where they stood, their bodies finally giving out. Medical teams rushed in from the rear to help the wounded. The female soldier with the hurt arm finally sat down, her back against a destroyed wall, and closed her eyes. Her weapon rested across her lap. She did not let go of it even as she slept. She had been awake for 96 hours. She had fought for 96 hours, and she had won. Commander Vorath turned to face his officers. Their faces showed a mixture of awe and fear. Good. They should be afraid. They had just seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. Record everything, Vorath ordered. Every data point, every observation, every analysis. High Command needs to see this. All of it. Leave nothing out. Yes, Commander, Kessa replied. What shall I title the report? Vorath considered the question carefully. He thought about what he had witnessed over the past 4 days. The determination, the endurance, the absolute refusal to surrender even when surrender was the logical choice. Title it The Human Limit, he said finally, and note that we have not found it yet. 3 days after the battle ended, the Kalari received new data that disturbed them even more than the fighting itself. The human survivors were recovering at rates that seemed impossible. Medical specialist Ven had been monitoring the wounded soldiers since the battle ended. She stood before Commander Vorath now, her data tablet trembling slightly in her hands. Her face showed an expression of pure disbelief. Commander, I do not know how to explain what I am seeing. Show me. Ven pulled up the medical records on the main screen. This soldier took 4 projectile wounds during the battle. His left leg was badly damaged. His right arm suffered significant trauma. Any one of these wounds should have been fatal without immediate surgical intervention. He did not receive surgery for 37 hours after the final wound. By all medical understanding, he should have died. And yet, he is expected to make a full recovery. His body is healing at a rate 3 times faster than our own species. He may have some permanent scarring, but he will regain full function. Vorath studied the data carefully. Is this normal for humans? That is what concerns me, Commander. According to our database, this is completely normal. Human bodies are remarkably resilient. They heal quickly from wounds that would disable other species. They adapt to damage. They recover from injuries that would permanently destroy Kalari bodies. Another officer spoke up from across the room. I have been studying their history, Commander. The humans have thousands of documented cases of impossible survival. One soldier was struck by multiple projectiles, lost most of his blood, and still managed to drag himself several kilometers to reach his unit. He survived and returned to duty within months. That is impossible, someone said. The humans do not seem to know that. They do these things regularly. Commander Vorath walked to the observation window. Earth hung in the void, peaceful and blue. Somewhere down there, soldiers who had fought for 96 hours were already recovering, already preparing to fight again if needed, already telling stories about what they had survived. "We have made a serious error," Vorath said quietly. "Sorry. We assumed humans were like other species we have encountered, soft, limited, easy to break." He turned to face his officers. "They are none of these things. They are harder than stone. They have limits that extend beyond our understanding, and they will not break, not easily, perhaps not at all." General Thax stepped forward. His old eyes were thoughtful. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" "I am suggesting that we reconsider our invasion plans, perhaps significantly." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. The Kelari had never reconsidered an invasion. It was not in their nature to hesitate once a target had been selected. Their entire culture was built around conquest and victory. But General Thax raised a hand for silence. "The commander may be right. I have been a warrior for 60 years. I have faced many enemies across many worlds. I have never seen anything like what we witnessed on that battlefield." He walked to the main screen and called up an image of the human soldiers at the end of the battle. They were dirty, bloody, exhausted beyond measure. Some could barely stand. Some were being carried by their comrades, and yet there was something in their eyes. "Look at them," Thax said. "Look at their eyes. Do you see fear? Do you see surrender? I see neither. I see only determination. I see only the will to continue. Even now, even in their exhaustion, they look like they would fight again if needed." "They are primitives," someone objected. "Our technology is far superior. Our ships could destroy their cities in hours." "Is that so?" Thax replied. "Our weapons are more advanced, yes, but weapons do not fight wars. Warriors do. And these humans are warriors like none I have ever encountered." He turned to face the assembly. "We have been watching them fight each other. Imagine what they would do if an outside enemy threatened their planet. Imagine if they stopped fighting among themselves and turned that ferocity outward. Imagine them united." No one spoke. The thought was too disturbing to consider. Commander Vorath nodded slowly. "General Thax is correct. We need to approach this differently, not as conquerors but as something else." "What would you suggest, Commander?" Lieutenant Kessa asked. "I do not know yet, but I know that simply attacking them would be a mistake. These humans fight like nothing we have ever seen. If we go to war with them, it will not be the quick victory we expected. It will be a long, bloody conflict that will cost us dearly. It may cost us everything." He looked back at the planet below. "We need to learn more. We need to understand them better. Only then can we decide how to proceed." The order was given. The Kelari would continue watching. They would study the humans for as long as necessary, and they would think very carefully before making their next move. On the surface of Earth, the human soldiers knew nothing of the watchers above. They went about their recovery, their lives, their daily struggles. They had no idea that they had just given an entire alien civilization a reason to pause and reconsider. Private Tomer sat alone in the observation room later that night. The screens showed images of the battlefield, now quiet and empty. Cleanup crews were beginning their work. Tomer thought about what he had witnessed. He thought about his own training, his own limits, his own understanding of what a warrior should be. He had been proud of his ability to fight for 18 hours. The humans had fought for 96. "What are you?" Tomer whispered to the silent screen. "What made you this way?" There was no answer, just the blue planet hanging in space, holding its secrets close. 1 month had passed since the 96-hour battle. The Kelari had continued their observation of Earth, gathering data and analyzing everything they saw. What they learned only deepened their concern and their fascination. Commander Vorath stood before the High Council, delivering his report. The largest military leaders of the Kalari Empire sat in rows before him, their faces unreadable. These were warriors who had conquered worlds, who had never known defeat. Now they were hearing things that challenged their understanding of the galaxy. The battle we witnessed was not an isolated incident, Vorath explained, pulling up data on the massive screen behind him. Human history is filled with similar examples, prolonged sieges lasting months or years, soldiers fighting through injuries that should have killed them, entire populations resisting invaders despite overwhelming odds. He showed images from human history files, soldiers in ancient armor standing against vast armies, modern fighters continuing to resist after their cities had been destroyed, wounded warriors refusing evacuation to remain with their units, civilians fighting alongside soldiers when their homes were threatened. They call this many things: courage, honor, duty, but it is something more fundamental than that. It is built into them at the deepest level. It is part of who they are as a species. Admiral Zeros leaned forward. Every species has brave individuals, Commander. This is nothing new. With respect, Admiral, you are wrong. Vorath changed the display. Among the Kalari, approximately 3% of our warriors are capable of extended combat beyond normal limits. These are our elite, our best. Among the Vorten, it is 2%. Among the Thessics, less than 1%. He paused for effect. The room was completely silent. Among humans, it is over 60%. Murmurs ran through the council. Several admirals exchanged worried glances. Some shook their heads in disbelief. You are saying that 6 out of 10 human soldiers can fight beyond their physical limits? General Thax asked from his seat. That is correct, General, and that number may be conservative. Humans have a concept they call rising to the occasion. Under pressure, ordinary humans become capable of extraordinary things. Citizens become soldiers. Soldiers become heroes. Heroes become legends. Vorath pulled up video footage from the battlefield. This soldier was a civilian before the conflict began. He was a teacher in a small village. He had no military training whatsoever. Within 3 days of combat, he was functioning at a level that would qualify him for our elite forces. Humans adapt. They learn. They grow stronger under pressure. This is concerning, Admiral Zeros admitted. But we still have technological superiority. Our ships, our weapons, our shields, all far beyond anything they possess. That is true, Admiral, but consider this. Vorath changed the display again. Humans have had spaceflight capability for less than 100 of their years. In that time, they have landed on their moon, sent probes to every planet in their system, and established a presence in orbit. Their rate of technological advancement is faster than any species we have recorded, faster than our own. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that if we go to war with humanity, we may win the first battles, but they will learn from every defeat. They will adapt. They will improve. They will steal our technology, copy it, and make it their own. And they will not stop fighting, ever. Not until we are defeated or they are destroyed to the last individual. The council chamber was silent. Vorath had their full attention now. The 96-hour battle showed us what humans can do when fighting each other. Imagine them united against a common enemy. Imagine their entire species, billions of individuals, all focused on a single goal. They would be unstoppable. General Thax stood slowly. His old bones creaked, but his voice was strong. I have heard enough. I believe the commander is correct. Invading Earth would be a mistake. Several council members objected loudly, but Thax silenced them with a gesture. I am not suggesting we fear them. I am suggesting we respect them. There is a difference, a very important difference. He walked to the front of the chamber, standing beside Vorath. We have conquered 17 species. Each time, victory was assured because we understood our enemy. We knew their limits. We knew their breaking points. We knew how to defeat them. He gestured to the screen, still showing the human soldiers. We do not know the human limits. After watching them for months, we still do not know where they break. That makes them dangerous, more dangerous than any enemy we have faced. Admiral Zeros considered this for a long moment. What do you propose, General? I propose we make contact, not as conquerors but as equals. We open diplomatic relations. We learn about them. We let them learn about us. We find a different path. And if they refuse, if they are hostile? Thax smiled grimly. Then we will have a war, but it will be a war we enter with full knowledge of what we face, not the easy victory we assumed. We will be prepared for what they can do. The council debated for hours. Voices were raised. Arguments were made. In the end, they voted to accept Thax's proposal. The invasion was cancelled. A diplomatic team would be assembled instead. On the observation ship, the crew received the news with mixed feelings. Some were disappointed. They had wanted to test themselves against the humans to prove Kalari superiority. Others were relieved. They had seen enough to know that such a test might not end well. Private Tomer was among the relieved. He had spent the past month studying human culture, trying to understand what made them so different. What he had found amazed him and changed him. Humans told stories about their endurance. They celebrated it. They had running competitions where individuals would cover distances that would kill a Kalari. They had fighting sports where opponents would strike each other for hours. They climbed mountains for no reason other than the challenge. They crossed deserts. They swam vast oceans. They did not do these things because they had to, but because they wanted to. They challenged themselves constantly, always pushing to find their limits. And when they found those limits, they pushed past them. Tomer had begun keeping a personal record of human achievements. Soldiers who had continued fighting after losing limbs. Explorers who had survived alone in hostile environments for months or years. Athletes who had competed through injuries that should have ended their careers. Ordinary people who had done extraordinary things in moments of crisis. Each story was more impossible than the last, and each one was true. Tomer, Lieutenant Kessa's voice broke his concentration. The commander wants to see you. He found Voreth in his quarters, reviewing data as always. The commander looked tired. He had barely rested since the observation began. Private Tomer, I understand you have been studying human psychology. Yes, Commander, I have been trying to understand their mentality, their way of thinking. Good, I have a task for you. The diplomatic team will need advisors who understand humans. I am recommending you for the position. Tomer's hearts beat faster. Me, Commander, I am only a private. I am the youngest warrior on this ship. You are also the most informed member of this crew on human behavior. Your studies have been thorough. I have read your reports. They show insight and understanding. Voreth handed him a data tablet. This is your assignment. You will continue your research during the journey to Earth. When we arrive, you will help our diplomats understand who they are dealing with. I am honored, Commander, but I am not sure I truly understand humans. The more I learn, the more questions I have. Voreth nodded slowly. That is exactly why I am choosing you, Private. The worst mistake we could make is believing we understand them when we do not. Your uncertainty may save us from that error. Tomer accepted the assignment. As he left the commander's quarters, he thought about what lay ahead. Meeting humans, speaking with them, perhaps even befriending them. The thought was both terrifying and exciting. The Kalari diplomatic ship entered Earth's solar system 6 months after the 96-hour battle. They had announced their presence in advance, transmitting messages of peaceful intent in every human language they had learned. The humans had responded with cautious welcome. Private Tomer stood at the observation deck, watching the blue planet grow larger as they approached. Beside him were the diplomats he would be advising. Ambassador Veth was the leader, a veteran of 12 first contact situations, but even she seemed nervous. You have studied them extensively, Veth said to Tomer. What should we expect? Tomer considered the question carefully. Expect the unexpected, Ambassador. Humans are full of contradictions. They can be violent and peaceful, cruel and kind, weak and strong. They contain multitudes, as one of their poets wrote. That is not very helpful advice. It is the best I can offer. Every time I think I understand them, they surprise me. The ship entered orbit. Below, human spacecraft were rising to meet them. Small craft, primitive by Kalari standards, but piloted with skill and precision. The humans were showing off their capabilities, Tomer realized. They wanted the Kalari to know they were not helpless, not afraid, not willing to be intimidated. Contact was made. Coordinates were exchanged. The diplomatic meeting would take place at a human military base. The Kalari had requested it specifically. They wanted to see human soldiers up close. When the shuttle landed, Tomer was one of the first to step out. The air was different here, heavier, wetter. He found himself face to face with a group of human military officers in crisp uniforms, and in front of them, leading the welcome committee, was someone he recognized immediately. It was the female soldier from the battle, the one who had fought for 96 hours with a wounded arm. Colonel Sarah Martinez, she introduced herself, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. Welcome to Earth. Tomer accepted the handshake. Her grip was strong despite her small size. He looked at her arm. There was no sign of the wound she had received during the battle. It had healed completely. I know you, Tomer said before he could stop himself. I watched you fight. Martinez's eyes narrowed slightly. Watched me fight. From orbit, my people observed your battle. 96 hours. I saw everything, all of it. There was a moment of tension. The human officers exchanged glances. Then Martinez smiled, her face softening. Well, that must have been educational. It changed everything we thought we knew about your species. The human colonel nodded slowly. Good, then maybe you'll take us seriously. The diplomatic talks began the next day. Ambassador Veth met with human leaders to discuss treaties, trade, and cooperation. But Tomer found himself spending most of his time with Colonel Martinez. She had been assigned to show him human military culture, to help him understand. Why did you keep fighting? Tomer asked one evening. They were sitting in a military recreation area watching human soldiers train. The soldiers moved with energy and purpose. For 96 hours, how did you not stop? Martinez was quiet for a moment. She seemed to be remembering something painful. I had to. But your body was failing. Your wounds were severe. By any reasonable measure, you should have withdrawn. Reasonable, she laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Humans aren't always reasonable. We do things that don't make sense because they need to be done. I do not understand. Martinez pointed to the soldiers training before them. See those young men and women. They're from towns and cities all over our country. They have families, friends, dreams. During that battle, people like them were behind me. 60,000 civilians in the valley. If I stopped, if I gave up that pass, the enemy would have reached them. She turned to look at Tomer directly. Her eyes were intense. I didn't keep fighting because I could. I kept fighting because I couldn't let them down. There was no choice, no option, just the need to protect them. That's all that mattered. Tomer felt something shift in his understanding. You did it for them. I did it for them. Every human in that battle did it for someone else. That's our secret, if you want to call it that. We don't fight for glory or honor or conquest. We fight for each other, for our families, for our homes, for the people we love. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the base. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Your people are impressive, she said. Your technology is amazing. I've seen the reports on your ships, your weapons, but you want to know why we're not afraid of you. Why? Because we know what we can do when we have something worth fighting for. We've seen it. We've lived it. We've bled for it. She turned back to him. And nothing in this galaxy will change that. Nothing will make us give up. Nothing. Tomer understood then why the High Council had chosen diplomacy over invasion. It was not fear. It was wisdom. The talks continued for weeks. Agreements were reached. Treaties were signed. The Kelari and humans would be allies, not enemies. Trade would begin. Cultural exchange would follow. A new chapter in galactic history was starting. On the last day, Colonel Martinez found Tomer at the observation window. Earth hung below, beautiful and strong. "Your ambassador says this is a historic moment," Martinez said. "It is. My people have never made equals of another species before. We have always been conquerors." "Why now?" Tomer turned to her. "Because of what I watched. 96 hours, you and your soldiers fighting beyond all limits. You showed us something we had never seen." "What was that?" "That the greatest weapon is not technology or numbers or strategy. It is will, the refusal to surrender, the determination to keep going when everything says you should stop." He paused. "My people are strong, but you are something more. You are unbreakable." Martinez smiled. "We break all the time, we fall down, we fail, we lose hope." "Then how can you be unbreakable?" "Because we get back up, every time. No matter what, that's what makes us unbreakable. Not that we never fall, but that we always rise." As the Kelari ship departed Earth's orbit, Tomer made his final entry in his research journal. He had been trying to understand humans for months. Now, finally, he thought he had the answer. Humans were not special because of their bodies, though their endurance was remarkable. They were not special because of their minds, though their adaptability was impressive. They were special because of their hearts, their ability to love, to sacrifice, to fight for something greater than themselves. The Kelari had conquered 17 species across the galaxy. They had never found one they could not defeat. Until now. The 96-hour battle had changed everything. A group of tired, wounded, exhausted human soldiers had unknowingly saved their planet from invasion. They had shown an entire civilization what humanity was capable of. And the Kelari, for all their pride and power, had learned a valuable lesson. Some enemies were not meant to be conquered. Some species were not meant to be defeated. Some limits were not meant to be found. Humanity was all of these things, and the galaxy was better for it. As the stars streaked past, Tomer looked forward to the future. Not a future of war and conquest, but of friendship and cooperation. Humans and Kelari working together, learning from each other, building something new. It was a good future, a worthy future. And it had all started with 96 hours of impossible human stubbornness. Somewhere on Earth, Colonel Sarah Martinez was probably already back to work, training the next generation of soldiers. She would never know that her determination had changed the course of history. That was fine. Humans rarely did things for recognition. They did them because they needed to be done. That was the human way. That was the human limit. There was none.